Let's go to CNN contributor Steve Vladeck, a constitutional lawyer and a law professor at American University, Washington College of Law. Also with us, Stephen Harrison, who wrote a piece for Salon entitled "Scalia Told Me a Secret About George W. Bush." Great to have both of you on.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Steve Vladeck, first to you. I was talking to Jeff Toobin, who's written the book on these justices, and he thinks it'll be a couple of weeks before really we start seeing a name perhaps from President Obama. I'm wondering for you, talk to us about the process and how he would weigh, more of a liberal, farther left-leaning justice versus maybe a more consensus centrist pick.
Sure, Brooke. I think from the president's perspective, the fact that this is Justice Scalia's seat is going to weigh heavily on the consideration for who should replace him. I think we're going to see more of a moderate, more of a centrist nominee than we might have if, for example, Justice Ginsburg had left the court or someone else from the left bloc. And so I think that what's going on right now behind the scenes is the White House is going through the list of folks they've considered in the past, making sure it's up to date, and figuring out which of those nominees makes the most sense in this political climate and for Justice Scalia's seat.
So then what happens then if you have these sort of 4 and 4, 4 more left, 4 right, Supreme Court at the moment, and depending on how long this nomination process lasts, what happens to the affirmative action cases, immigration, health care, that are waiting?
Yeah, I think there are a couple possibilities. So one is the justices find some way to break the 4-4 deadlock. Maybe they find a very narrow ground on which to rule, for example, in the challenge to President Obama's immigration policy. Maybe they simply say the states didn't have standing as opposed to reaching the merits. But, Brooke, the two other possibilities are to affirm the decision 4-4 by an equally divided court that leaves the lower court decision intact without creating precedent, or to
Let me jump in, and forgive me, I'm being told Hillary Clinton is addressing Justice Scalia, talking about the Supreme Court right now.
To confirm whoever the president nominates. I tell you, my friends, one of the great advantages of our country is we have always been a nation under the rule of law. Let us never, ever deviate from that. As your Secretary of State, I went to 112 countries on behalf of the United States. I went to a lot of countries where dictators, where special interests call the shots, where basically they interfere in the way government operates to their advantage, where they do everything they can to stamp out opposition because they believe they have all the answers and they want the power, they want the money, they want everything that goes with it. We can never.
Before we dipped in, she was essentially saying that the Senate, the Republican majority Senate, has the duty to consider whoever it is that the president puts out there as a potential nominee. Stephen Harrison, let me bring you in. Tell me about when you met Justice Scalia. You were studying at Oxford, and he came to speak, and you won this spot at dinner. What was it you asked him?
Well, I asked him two questions. First, I asked him to assess President George W. Bush's leadership qualities. This was in 2008. And he sort of looked at me and looked around the room, and he said, I have the utmost respect for the Bush family and for George W. Bush, but a lot of my fellow Republicans believe that the other Bush brother was much brighter and that the wrong Bush brother became president.
The other Bush brother being the man who wants to be president currently, Jeb Bush.
Yes, that's right, Jeb Bush. And I was a little surprised that he would be so candid about this. And I think the other guests were surprised too, but I really think that was his personality. He was very forthright and always shared his opinion.
You also asked him about campaign finance reform. Some of his other comments to you are really telling about who he was as a person. Who did he tell you was his best friend?
He said Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, hands down, was his best friend. He spoke very fondly of their friendship, even though they usually, and most of the time, disagreed.
Steve Vladeck, just back to you on the politics of all of this, not just in terms of the Republican primary folks who want to be president, but also on a Senate level re-election, especially in more moderate states. Sure. How nasty is this going to get?
I think that's going to be up to the Republicans in the Senate. I think the White House is going to walk this very carefully. I think we're going to get a nominee who they believe is very confirmable, perhaps someone who this very Senate has already confirmed. So someone like Judge Srinivasan in the D.C. Circuit, who was confirmed 98-0. And then it's going to be up to the Republicans in the Senate. Are they really going to try to run out the clock on President Obama which is still 11 months, left in office, or they're going to actually take seriously a nominee who's put forward in good faith, have the hearings, go through the full process, and see if that nominee receives enough support. The ball is really going to be in their court once President Obama puts forward a name.
Steve Vladeck, Stephen Harrison, thank you both so much.